Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we are going to build a to-do app by using Vue.js, and we are also going to have draggable elements so the user can move the tickets from pending to in progress and can easily track the state of each ticket. At the bottom of each column we will have a form with the title and description of the ticket, and we could submit the form, which will add the ticket in the column. When the ticket is created, we can move it to another column, and we can also remove it from the list. This is the command that I ran in the terminal in order to generate the Vue.js template project, and this is how it looks like in the browser. And this is the code. I'm using Visual Studio Code. And I'm also using Prettier, which will format the code when I save the file. And this is the preset that I'm using for the project. And let's go back to the browser. I will close this tab. And for the draggable elements, I will be using the vue.draggable library. So this is the repo that we are going to use. So let's get started. I will first remove some of the unnecessary components from the project. So the welcome component is not needed. Let me see what we have right now. And we can also remove the hello world component from the wrapper element. And I can convert the header into div element. And I can also remove all of these components. Okay, so let's also remove the icons. And I will have the empty components folder, and the app component will be a root component. So we are starting from the clean template. So let's create our first component. It will be to-do list. So I will start from the template. And for now, it will just be a div wrapper. And inside of that, I would like to create a component with the name to-do group. So basically, this component will contain all the items and actually the tickets that will belong to a certain column. I will also start from the template, and it will have a div wrapper element and the header inside, which will say that this is to-do group, or we can maybe have the status name in the header, which will be pending for now. And next we will have the unordered list of tickets. But before that, let's go back to the to-do list component and import to-do group component there. I will use the script tag and add setup attribute, and lang will be set to TypeScript. The setup attribute will be used in order to use composition API. And I will import to-do group. Now let's continue with the template in to-do group. So we want to render pending tickets. So I will go above and create the script tag. And I want to create a variable that will hold the array of pending tickets. So I will call it pending to-dos, and it will have the ID let's say that it will be the number 1. Then the title will be Learn Vue.js. And the description will be watch companion videos. It will also have the status, which will be pending. But before that, let's create an enum for that, which will be called to do status. So it might be pending, then in progress, and completed. So this approach will prevent us from hard coding the values. Now let's also create an interface for the type of to do. So it will have the ID, which will be number, then the title will be string, description will be also string, and the status will be to do status. Now we can say that pending to do's variable will be an array of to do type. So let's go to the template and we can make an iteration through the list. We will use v4. And inside the li element, we want to display the title of to-do item. And don't forget to add a key. The key will be the ID of to-do item. So now in the app component, we can include to-do list component. And if we go into the browser, we will see our first pending ticket. Now we want to have 3 to-do groups, one for the pending, one for the in progress, and the last one for completed items. So we want to add a property status for to-do group component, and we want to pass the status that we want to display, and the first one will be pending. So since we want to reuse this type and enum, I will create a special file called types, and I will move it to there. Now we can import it in the to-do group component. Oh, we need to add export in front of the declaration. So now we can import it. And now we can reuse it whenever it's needed. So nothing is currently displayed. If you open the browser's console, you will see the error. So we are trying to pass the pending value, but yeah, I think we didn't import the to-do status inside of the to-do list component. So let's pass another status property, and Visual Studio Code should suggest me to import the variable, or rather not. So I will just copy and paste it from the to-do group. and I will change the value to in progress, and the final one will be completed. So now we want to specify inside of the to-do group that we want to receive this property status. So I will create an interface for properties, and it will contain status, which will be the type of to-do status. And now I will use the method called define props, and I will pass the props generic, and the value that I received from that method will be stored in the variable called props. So now I can use it inside a component. In this specific case, it is important for displaying the header text. Now I can create a computed variable based on the status that is passed. So I can create a switch case, and in case that we get pending status, I will just return the pending text. In case of in progress, I will return in progress text. And in case of completed, I will return completed text. I will skip the default case for now, and let's display the group label in the header. And if we open the browser, you will see different headers for each to-do group. There is something red above. So it seems that we imported computed from the wrong module. So it should be just Vue. And now we will have TypeScript complain about missing default case, which I'm going to add right now. So the default label can be something generic. Let's say to-do group. Now that we have the status as a property for this component, we can move the pending to-dos array to another place, which will be a centralized place for using the to-dos data. Let's say that we want to create something that is similar to the state manager. So I will create a folder named store, and inside I will create use to-dos file. So first I will need the type for the to-do store. So I will create an interface called to-do store. So the first property will be the pending status, and it will be an array of to-dos. And basically we want to have every to-do status inside of this type. Now I will create a reactive variable called to-do store, and I will pass the to-do store interface as a generics. And I will also need a default value for the store, which I'm going to create above. So the default value will contain all of these properties, but only with empty array. Now we don't want to expose this reactive variable directly to the components. So first I will export this composable function, and inside that I will return the method that will be used by components in order to get the data. The method name will be getToDos by status. So basically we are going to use the status that is passed to the to-do group as a property. So the function should return the computed value, which will be created by the callback function that I will pass. And this function should return the correct to-dos group. Now I will add it to the property of the object that will be returned from the composable, and inside of the to-do group I will use this composable, but first let's add a default value for pending to-do items. We can remove pending to-dos for now. So I will call use to-dos composable, and I will also need to import it, and the value that is returned will be an object that will contain getToDos by status. So I would need to import it manually, because Visual Studio Code doesn't offer me any auto suggestion. And I also prefer moving the imports from Vue.js on top. Now let's bring back to-do list variable, and I will call getToDos by status and pass the status from the props. Let's also update the template, and I will open the browser so we can check the changes, and everything works fine. Now we can also change the way we created the group label. We can also create an object that will have the key value pair, and for the key we will have the to-do status, and for the value it will be the text that we want to display. So it will work the same, so just if you want to know another approach. And in the template we need to pass the status as well. Now it's time for the CSS. I will open the browser and the DevTools and check our current structure. So we have the logo and there is a margin on the right side. So I want to remove that. I will go to the app component, and here is the logo selector. Let me check it again. We still have that margin, and here it is, another selector that I want to remove. And now we don't have any margins to the logo, which is good. And let's go to the to-do list, and on the wrapper element I will add a class name which will be called groups wrapper, and down below I will open the styles tag, and I will add a scoped attribute because I want these styles to be used only for this specific component. And the groups wrapper will be flex. And now I can set the justify content. I can set it to space around, and I can also add a gap between the items. Now let's go to the to-do group component, and I will also add a wrapper class name. It will be group wrapper, and down below I will add a style tag, and the group wrapper will have Let me check the browser. So I will set flex to 1 because I want to have every element equal in size. But I expected that the element will be spreaded over the full width of the screen. Never mind, let's just continue. So I will also add a padding, which will create an inner space between the border of the element and the content. And the background color will be, I will just place black here, and I will just use a color picker. Let's say this one is nice. So let's go back to the component. I will continue with the UL element, unordered list, and I will remove the padding with setting it to 0. So now it doesn't have the padding anymore. And I also want to remove this circle in front of the list item element. So I will create a selector for that and set list style type to none. So now it looks fine. And now I can also add a background color to the list item. And I will pick this one. It seems to be nice, and the text will have the color of the previous color that I choose. And now I want to add a padding, so I have the space in the list item. And it looks nice. So I will also add a cursor because we want to drag this element from different columns. And I will also add a margin bottom so we can make a space between multiple tickets in the same column. Inside of the list item, we can also display the to-do description. So next to the title, I will create a span element which will contain the description. Now I can also add a class name, which I'm going to use in order to style this element. Let's check the browser to see what we have. So the description text is next to the title, and I want to have a smaller font size for the description. Okay, it looks good. And let's also increase the width of the group wrapper by setting the width. So let's see what will look good. So 300 pixels looks fine. I wanted to achieve this by using flex property, but it didn't work. It's probably related to the parent component structure and their styles. So I don't want to waste too much time on the CSS. And let's try to center this layout. I will replace the styles in the main CSS. So instead of display grid, I will use display flex, and I will remove grid template column. Here is the place, and now the layout should be centered. Now I would like to center the logo, and let's try adding the flex to the wrapper element. So in order to achieve that, we need to wrap the div, to wrap the image into a div. And then the parent element that holds the wrapper and the logo should have the display set to flex. And now in the browser we can try out styles in order to see how it looks. I will set flex direction to column and align items set to center, and this is what we wanted to achieve. So I will just copy and paste these styles into code. And this is how it looks. So I don't really like how the title and the description are placed next to each other. So I want to have them in the separate lines. I will wrap the to-do description with the div element. So now it looks better. So now we come to the point when we want to include draggable library. So this is the GitHub repo that we are going to use, and this is the command that we want to run in order to add the draggable package. I'm using yarn, so I will use the yarn command, and if you check the package JSON, you will see the library is there. Now inside of the to-do group component, we will import the draggable element, which will be here instead of the UL element. And now I will copy and paste the list item element, and I can remove the UL. We can also remove the UL styles. And now we can create a class name for the draggable component. So we also need to pass the template for the item slot. So I will open the template tag, and I will specify that this is the template for the item slot, and we will also have the slots property element, and I will move the list item element inside. So basically this template will be the draggable element that we want to use. Since we removed the iteration, now we should use the slots property element, or we can just rename it to the old one to do and keep the same template. Let's also open the browser and the DevTools so we can track the changes. And we want to pass the list property to the draggable component, and it will be to-do list. We also want to pass the group name for this list, which will be to-dos, so we can distinguish if we have multiple draggable elements. So if we refresh the page, there will be one item. And we also want to have item key, which will be used to distinguish the draggable items. And I want to distinguish to-do items by ID. Now we can move the ticket from pending to in progress and to completed, but it also doesn't work sometimes. So in order to make it work better, I will just increase the height of the draggable element, or rather draggable component. So I will set that the min height will be 200 pixels. And now dragging the item will be much easier. Now let's actually create a component that will be in charge for adding the new to-do items. I will name it create to do, and let's add a template. For now, it will be just a form element with the heading inside. And above the template, I will open the script. And the thing that I want to start with is the display form ref, which we are going to use in order to toggle the form elements. The default value will be false, which means that the elements are not going to be visible. And I will rename it to should display form. And I can use if and else directives in order to conditionally display the template. And below the heading, I will create a template that will be a wrapper for the form element. And now inside of the form element, I will create the input fields. In order to display them one below another, I will wrap them with the div element. And the first input will be the type of text, and it will be the title for the to-do item. And I'm going to need the value for the v model directive, and I will create the new to-do reactive value inside of the script. So it will be an object of type to do. So we are going to pass to do type as generics. And we need to specify default values. The title and description will be empty strings. And the status will be pending for now, but later we are going to fill this value with from the property that we are going to pass to this component. And we will get a complaint from the TypeScript which says that the ID is not declared. So I will omit the ID since we cannot create it from the form input fields. So we are going to add it later when we call the method that will append this item to the list. Now we can fill the vModel directive. So for the first one, we will have the title, and I will copy and paste the template for the description and change it to the text area. And I will also add the buttons for submitting the form and for canceling it. For the cancel button, I will add the click event directive that will call the reset form method, which will reset the values to the default values. So should display form will have the value of false, and the new to-do object will have the title and description back to the empty strings. Now let's go back to the to-do group component, and let's include the create to-do component and see the form in action. I will open the page, and the form is here by default, which means that we did something wrong. So let's check the condition for displaying the form. So the condition in the if directive was wrong. And now if we click add new, the form should be displayed. So I will attach click event and change the value of should display form. And we also need to change the vModel for the text area. And now if I click on add new, the form will be displayed, and after clicking on the cancel button, the form will be hidden. So as I previously mentioned, we want to attach the status for the new to-do by passing the property. So I will pass it to the create to-do component. And I will use the same props inside of the create to-do. I will also use define props method and pass the props generics. And now for the new to-do object, I will use the status from the property. I will also need to import to-do status type. And everything seems to be working. So let's go back to the browser, and moving the item works fine, but we are missing the feature for adding the new to-do item. We are going to assign submit event to the form, and I'm going to add prevent modifier. So we are going to prevent default behavior, and I will call handle on submit method, which I'm going to create in the script. So here I will call the method from use to do's, but it's not created yet. And after that method, I will call reset form because I want to reset the form to the default values. Now it's time to add a method for adding a new to-do item, and the name will be add new to-do. And it will have a to-do as a parameter. And now I will access to-do store, and I will access the specific group that I want to update by using the status of the to-do. And now I will call push method, which will append the new to-do to the list. And I will also expose this method so it can be accessible when we use to-dos. So let's use it inside of create to-do component. I will copy the method name, and I will need to import this composable. And now we should call the method inside of handle on submit method, and we should pass new to do. So as I mentioned previously, we are going to generate the ID of this to-do object. In order to achieve that, I will use math random method, and if you call this method in the browser's console, you will get the decimal number between 0 and 1. So we want to have full integers, so I will multiply this decimal with a huge number. So the risk of having the same ID is really low. Now let's go back to the browser and test it out. So if we click add new, the form will be displayed, and I will enter the title and description. And if I submit the form, the to-do item will be added to the pending group in this case, and now I can move the items to the in progress column, and I can also add some tickets there. I can reorder them, and I can also move them to completed. Now, since we can add to-do items, it will make sense to also remove them. So I will create a span element that will have X letter inside. So I will use this element as a button that the user can click on and delete the to-do item. I will also add some styles. So I will add float and set it to right, and the cursor set to pointer. So the X button will be on the right side, and it will behave as a button. Let's go to use to-dos composable and add delete to-do method. So the method will have to-do that we want to delete as a parameter, and then we will access the to-do group by using the status, and we will just filter that to-do item out by checking the ID. And now I will expose this method, and we can use it inside of the components. And now we can assign click event to the delete element, and we will call delete to do method from use to dos, and we will pass the to do that is selected. Now let's test it in the browser. We can remove the item, but we also have a bug that I want to show you. If I create a new item and then if I move it to the next column, if I press delete button, nothing is going to happen. So let's explain it better visually. I will add to-do status displayed in the template, and let's see what happens when we move the to-do item. So first we have the pending status, and if I move it to in progress or completed, nothing is changed because we are reading this value from the store, but we are not updating the value when we move the items to different columns. To be more specific, the status property in the to-do object needs to be updated. So in order to fix this, I will create a method called onDraggable change, and there is change event for draggable component, and I will pass this method. And this event will be triggered every time the list is changed inside of the draggable component, and it will have a payload which is the type of any, unfortunately, because it's not covered by TypeScript, but ideally we should use unknown type and then use a type narrowing, but for simplicity reason I will just set it to any. So let's console log the payload to see what we get. When we move the to-do item from pending to in progress, this event is fired twice. So in the first payload we have the added property, and then we have the element, and we have the status pending. Also we have the removed payload with the same to-do item. So we can use one of these objects to update to-do item with the proper status. So I can add a checkpoint to see if there is an element inside the added property. And now I will update to-do status of the to-do item, and I will need to create a method for that, which will be called update to-do. It will have a to-do item as a parameter. It will be an object that we want to update, and the new status, which will be a value of the new status in the to-do object. Now I will set status to the new status, and I will expose this method. So let's go back to the to-do group component and call update to-do method and pass the to-do that we want to update, which is the element in the payload, and also the status that we want to use to update the to-do item. We also need to import the method from useToDos, and let's check it in the browser. When we move the item from pending to in progress, the status is being updated. You can see in the template, and if I press delete, it will be gone. So we fixed the issue. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you and that you learned something new that you can use on your projects.